My name is Jamie Lammers. I'm an aspiring actor, writer, singer, songwriter, possibly director. We'll see where all of that goes. You can follow my Instagram at Animal Doctor 181. You can find my SoundCloud at James Lammers. You can find my YouTube at Mega Animal Doctor. And yeah, you can find a couple of my songs on that SoundCloud. Thank you to a guy named Mellowfi for producing all of that stuff for me. That was great. And if you want, you can search on Spotify and stream Every Time by Finn O'Sullivan, which also features me singing the vocals for that. So yeah, feel free to explore as much of that as you want. I would say ultimately I'm trying to find people who will appreciate me for me and my art, and people that will allow me to express myself in the art that I find most dear. And whether that be through theater or writing or acting or singing or whatever it may be, I'm not sure, because I'm delving into so many different creative parts and I want to try them all.
Yeah,
I'm not 100% sure which one I most am set on, but if anything, out of all of the things that I'm interested in, I would just love, people to appreciate what I make.
absolutely. I don't know if you had expectations when you started in, I guess, elementary slash middle school of this creative journey that you started, but has things kind of been the way you thought they would be, or have they been tougher than what you thought? Trying out for musicals, learning how to write a screenplay.
I would say the toughest part in regards to all of that is just getting what I create out there. Once I got out of middle school and high school, and I wasn't in a smaller town, and I didn't have, it wasn't quite as easy to like get cast in a show or get accepted into a job for a newspaper, because I've been writing for my local paper, and trying to branch out to other writing stuff as well. And I think the toughest part once I got out of high school was realizing, okay, now we're in the real world. Things are a lot more competitive. Here we go. And trying to see what you can get out there and how you can get it out there and what ends up sticking. And that's, I think, been the more challenging part for me, instead of being like, all right, here's kind of what I want to try. Here's kind of what although I will say my ideas kind of fly all over the place, and sometimes I don't completely get as focused as I would like on some of them. But yeah.
Well, has the journey so far and all these things you are doing, has your journey so far in this creative space, has it been fun?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't think I would love writing as much as I did, but I've grown a passion for it in the last couple of years, and I love it. I've always loved music. I've always loved singing. I've always, I've loved acting now for years. And, it's just being creative and showing that creative side of me and being validated for being creative is always the most fulfilling thing in the world to me.
Yeah. If you could go back in time, talk to little James, what advice would you give him?
Just keep going. It might take a while before, you get your big break, and you still haven't gotten your big break, but
Mhm.
that's okay, because you're enjoying what you're doing, and just keep going on it.
Well, how long have you been playing music?
I've been singing for as long as I can remember.
Mhm.
I wasn't able to join choir until middle school, but man, I've been singing for as long as I can remember. I started playing instruments probably around high school. I think I'd fiddled around with guitar and piano and ukulele a little bit before.
Mhm.
Not ukulele, actually, but guitar and piano, I think I'd fiddled with a little before high school.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until then that I really got interested in sitting down and actually learning the instruments. One of our pieces in choir required a ukulele, and so I started learning through that, and I've been teaching myself for the last 4 years with ukulele. Guitar is a little bit more recent. I'd say about 2, 3 years, something like that. And I just got a guitar last year for the first time, and so I've been playing on a lot since then.
So are they similar? I know they both have strings, the ukulele and the guitar, but are they similar?
I would say, yeah. They're the chords, the way you place your fingers on the chords are definitely different, and that can get a little bit of take a little bit of getting used to.
Mhm.
And the ukulele as well, I think it was at least easier for me because there's not as much space between the strings, and it's smaller anyway, and so it's easier to practice on there than the guitar chords are.
Mhm.
But once you get a feeling for both instruments, I'd say overall they're fairly similar.
Okay. Yeah. So what was the choir experience about? Like I had friends that were actually in the choir, but they always got harassed and bullied. So, I didn't really think that I wanted to do that. So what was that experience like being in a choir?
Which is crazy because I've had nothing but great experiences in choir.
Mm.
I've been doing choir since middle school, and I think at first I was hesitant about it because I had been singing on my own for as long as I can remember, and now all of a sudden I'm getting actual methods to singing. People are telling me how to sing, and I'm like,
Mm.
okay, I guess I'll go with this for a little bit.
Mm.
But after a while, I got used to the idea of like, okay, we're not only is this are these techniques to help you sing better and make your voice sound better and make you sing healthier as well, but it's also allowing you to sing better in the context of a group.
Mm.
And that's why those particular techniques are so important in that context. And so once I got used to that, I would, by the end of middle school, I loved it. And especially during high school, I did an a cappella choir for all 4 years of my high school. I went to a very small school, and
Yeah.
the choir typically ranged from anywhere from 8 to 13.
Okay.
Um, so that was the general range of that choir, and it was always great, seeing the people that went in every year, auditioned every year, and got in every year, and seeing those same people, or seeing who you've been excited to see audition, because it was a middle and high school choir. It was a middle and high school as well,
Yeah.
and so it was also exciting seeing who you knew that was excited to get into loquations, which is the choir, who was excited to get into the choir. And actually gets in, or who didn't seem to have any interest in joining, and then all of a sudden auditions and they're in.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so those were always interesting experiences, and really fun too.
Yeah. Well, since you started singing without being formally taught, did you have a lot to unlearn when you got to that point?
I don't think I had to really unlearn anything. Um, I think it was just a lot of added things onto what I had already done. Because in all honesty, like before choir, I think I was just singing for fun. It was something that I enjoyed doing, and something that I still wanted to pursue for the rest of my life. And then once I got into choir, I think that was when I really realized, okay, there are techniques to make you actually really sound good,
Hmm.
and really sound like you're, at the top of a game, at the top of your game, if not, you know,
Yeah.
in general. And so I think, yeah, I don't think there was anything major I had to unlearn. It was just adding things on top of what I'd already kind of done.
Yeah. Now, was your growth accelerated? Do you think that because it sounds like you kind of have things under control now, and that was like a very pivotal point in your career, or at least where you're headed. Did that accelerate your growth, do you think, as far as being able to sing, being in a choir?
Yeah, I think, and I'm still involved in choirs now. I'm still, doing choirs at my college. I'm currently going to CU Boulder,
Hmm.
and it's always really great, um, working with these people who are incredibly experienced in choral singing, and in the techniques that make you sound really great, and the lengths that they're willing to go to make sure you really work to be at the top of where you can be. Um, and so yeah, I think it's definitely accelerated my growth a lot. And I think that especially the things I've learned from my teachers as well, and the specific things they've taught about specific vocal techniques and breath techniques and all that stuff has really helped me improve in where I am.
Yeah. Well, what about songwriting? Are you doing that as well?
Oh yeah. I've been doing, I've been interested in songwriting, I think, at least a bit. I'd always been, when I was younger, I think I had the attitude, I wasn't thinking clearly, and I thought like you had to be famous in order to write songs, despite the fact that you have to write songs in order to become famous first.
Right.
So, in middle school, when I made that discovery of like, wow, people can actually write songs on their own, that would be really cool to like somehow try. I never really tried it until late high school, I would say, and I was never really proud of anything I'd written until COVID.
Okay.
And the first song I remember writing, which is actually on my Instagram and it's on my YouTube channel, it's called "Call It a Day," and it was a result of, I think it was the day or the day after things truly went down, and my everything started shutting down and school events were getting canceled, and I was stressed out of my mind, and my mom told me, why don't you go downstairs and just try and write something.
Okay.
And I'd never tried to like sit down and write a song fully in especially in that context before. But I decided to sit down and try, and the first things that came to the first lyrics that came to my brain, if I can remember it's something about how the world, the world's, it feels like the world's falling apart, yada yada. It's near the end of the chorus in the final song.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started writing it, I wanted it to be more of a song. I didn't want it to be dated by COVID. And so I changed the whole point of the song from being a song to vent my stresses about COVID to this story about a relationship that's kind of falling apart, that had nothing to do with a real story, but that felt right with what I was writing in that moment. And that was the first song I was really, really proud of. And from there, I've just continued trying to, write songs through my ukulele. I've just started practicing producing songs for the first time. And yeah, it's been really great just sitting down and trying to improve how I write songs, and feeling like I can actually make songs that I'm proud of, especially.
Yeah, that's really tough. I think that's the key, is making stuff that you're proud of. Would you say that there's a magical moment of when you're proud of it? Because I know for me, like when I look at some of the podcasts that I've done, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a good one, right? Do you have that? Like, there's this magical moment you go like, oh yeah, this is something I'm proud of.
Oh yeah, in songwriting mainly, I have those moments. I haven't had them as much because I write a ton outside of that anyway. I write articles, various stuff. I write scripts. I write short stories. But it's really in songs where I find that moment of like, okay, that's a lyric that really just cements this whole piece, or that's a lyric I didn't think I had the metaphorical intelligence to come up with.
Yeah.
Or that's the part of the song that I was missing that ties the whole story together. And those are always the moments where you realize, okay, this is something I'm happy to have, shared with the world and to call mine.
Yeah. Did you automatically know, or did choir give you the background of kind of like song structure? So you have an intro, you have your first verse, pre-chorus, chorus, or however you decide to structure your song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it probably did. I would say probably with song structure, it kind of came internally, because I was definitely a pop head growing up.
Yeah.
I didn't really delve into music outside of like the mainstream radio stuff until I would say late middle school. I guess that's kind of where a lot of things started cropping up in regards to my creative side and my interest in art in general. But I think I think that basic structure kind of stuck with me throughout most of my life since I listened to so much pop. You know, I grew up on Ariana Grande and some Ed Sheeran as well, and it's various other people on the radio, and I think that definitely stuck with me, and I'm sure that in a lot of ways, choir also kind of taught me about the different kinds and styles of songs that can exist out there as well.
Yeah. Do your songs have a popish feel to it?
I would say so, yeah. I would say alternative pop is probably the best way I describe most of the stuff I write. I've written mostly acoustic stuff. And like I said, I just started producing my own songs. And so, my ukulele and my guitar are my tools for writing most of my stuff. And so I would say it's mostly got that, yeah, acoustic alternative pop kind of feel.
Yeah. Have you written something where you go like, Dua Lipa or Ariana Grande, if she sang this, man, this would be a hit?
That's a good question. I don't think I've written anything in my repertoire specifically that I've thought like, oh, this is great. But I was inspired by a little snippet. Charlie Puth posted a song April of last year, I think, beginning of quarantine, that he made. It was just a little snippet of something he made, just talking about like, God, I can't wait for this quarantine thing to be over. And I developed that piece. I used that as the chorus for another whole song. So I wrote verses and a bridge for that piece that he'd already written.
Yeah.
And so if I could somehow get him to sing that, that would be fantastic. But who knows?
So. Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Who knows? Yeah.
Well, give me a couple of songs, man, that are pop that you think are fantastic or good.
Oh man. Like I said, growing up, I really liked Ariana Grande a lot. I remember, let's see, The Way featuring Mac Miller was one that is very nostalgic for me personally.
Yeah.
I grew up on Nickelodeon as well. And so Miranda Cosgrove's Kissin' You also has just nostalgic value. But in regards to popish songs that I really love now, I think as a whole, Carly Rae Jepsen's Emotion probably kind of catapulted me into the 80s synth pop vibe.
Yeah.
I love 80s synth pop a lot. She's got songs like Run Away With Me on there, or Warm Blood, or stuff along those lines. And that's a great album in general. Let's see, stereotypical pop. I still love Ed Sheeran, still love Charlie Puth. I think Voice Notes is a really, really great album.
Yeah.
Those are the popish artists that I think have still inspired me to this day.
Yeah. So when you attack a song or you write a song, is your writing, I guess not honestly structure, but the way you sit down and write, is it the same across all genres? So when you write a song, when you write a short story, when you write a short film script, is that the same or are they different?
They're definitely different. With a song, I think it varies every time. I think sometimes I have a chorus somewhat fairly fleshed out, and then I'm like, okay, how do I write something around that? Oftentimes I'll come up with a melody in my head that sounds good for like an opening part, and then I have to figure out like, okay, how do I make that into a full-fledged song? So I think with songs it varies the most on like what I end up doing. I think the constant for me though is that the second verse and the bridge are always the harder parts.
That's right.
Once you figured out the first verse and the chorus, it's like, okay, I've got the general parts here and I've got the repeating part here, but now I've got to really flesh out the rest of it.
Yeah.
Make sure that it's there. Let's see. I think with short stories, I just kind of write whatever I feel like I can write about. If I feel like I have an idea that can be written into a short story, then I'll do it. I haven't written one in a little bit. I've mainly tried to prioritize writing scripts, which, I think for me, it starts with a general idea of a story, and then seeing like, okay, is this a fleshed out enough story in my head where I could just kind of sit down, write a rough draft, work on it over the course of however long it takes me to finish this, and have at least a finished thing that I can show people. I think that's always my biggest motivator when it comes to like, is this something I want to write? And I'll often try and see if something that I really am interested in that's already been written, maybe I can adapt that into a script just for my own, just for something fun.
Yeah. Is there a community where you are of screenwriters and actors and just creative people?
Oh man, I'm sure there is. I know, I mean, CU Boulder has a great theater and choir program. They have great music and theater department here. In regards to local communities, I personally have not really reached out to too many. I've tried auditioning for stuff here, and that's had varying degrees of success.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to other communities that I've gotten involved in, there is one that I found. I just sometimes I'll just look online for various opportunities and just kind of see what opportunities I can take, because I figure might as well try.
Yeah.
If you don't
Absolutely.
try, yeah. If you don't try, you don't know what'll happen.
That's right.
And yeah, and I found this thing where this woman named Ella Rose was doing this thing where she had said, hey, if you contact me, I'll write you a monologue and you can perform, like suggest me, a monologue, and I'll write it for you, and you can perform it, and then that'll be that, and it'll be posted on social media. And I was like, oh great, that sounds really cool. So I filled out the form, emailed her, or whatever I did to get in contact with her. I suggested what monologue I wanted written, and I performed it. And then after I sent her that video, she told me of a thing she was starting online called Loud Voices, Silent Streets, which
that's where I found you, by the way.
That's where you found me.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Because I introduced or I interviewed like 3 other people who've been on there, and also from time to time I'll go to that channel, and that's where I saw you originally, because I think you've done multiple ones, right?
I have, yeah.
Right. And I said, wow, this guy is, like he's really doing it. And so that's when I decided to reach out to you, because you did multiple monologues.
Yeah. And I did. So for those of you who don't know, Loud Voices, Silent Streets is a little online theater company that's founded by Ella. It's mainly British actors, but also, there's a lot of people from America as well, mm-hmm. and around the world in general. And it's just a place where people can come and act in different shows and write different monologues and just get advice from other creative people. And they also have weekly monologue challenges. And I did, man, for months, I was doing those weekly monologue challenges. I was writing a monologue every single week for a long time, until finally got to the point where I was like, all right, I've written a lot. I'm burnt out. I need to take a break.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that was definitely my theater community for a while, because I had gotten so used to as I mentioned earlier, I went to a very small school, combined middle and high school, less than 300 kids.
Ooh, that's small. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really small school. So I got used to at least because our theater program was so small, I got used to at least being guaranteed a smaller role in something every fall play season or every spring musical season. And so once I got into college and the theater scene got a lot more competitive, it was great to have Loud Voices, Silent Streets, because it was a community I could still have as theater. I could still act in things. I could start delving into writing actual theatrical pieces and see what other people were doing, and hear about other experiences that people had, or different programs that people were trying out as well. Mm-hmm. And so that was great for me in a time where I definitely wanted and needed theater during that time.
Is trying out for theater, is it tense?
It can be. I think the tensest part for me is probably on the day, and also once you've actually figured out your audition piece and all that, because that's always the hardest part, is figuring out, okay, what piece am I going to do for this particular audition? Have I done this piece too much? Is this a good fit for this? Yada yada. Once that tension's out of the way, I think the biggest tension comes actually on the day, when you're worried, okay, I've practiced this enough. Is this going to go well? Is this going to go how I think it's going to go? Or is something going to happen? Is like my voice going to crack while I'm singing? Or am I going to forget my line? Or have I not prepared quite enough for what they're looking for, or something along those lines? And I think that's where the biggest tension comes. At this point, I've gotten used to waiting for the being cast or not being cast. But on the day, it's always like, okay, let's hope this goes well.
What kind of success have you had?
In my college, I have had one successful try. I got to read a new play that was being performed. I was a character named Butch in a play called Sky Books. Yeah, Sky Books. Mm-hmm. And it was about my character going to this low down bookstore where there's all these books on poisoning and all these books on murdering, and he's like a spy or whatever, and he's also pretty much a rookie, and he's asking the person at the front desk, like, where can I get a book on knives? Like, where can I get a book on murder in here? I just need some tips. Mm-hmm. And that was a really fun role to explore, because that was different than anything else I'd really ever played. But in middle and high school, oh man, so much theater. I could go on for hours, but I'll try and do like a Cliff Notes version of everything. Mm-hmm. So in sixth grade, I wasn't really that interested in theater. I heard like you could do plays and all that stuff, but I was like, I don't know if any of that interests me at the moment.
Right.
In seventh grade, I decided to give fall plays a try, because I figured, okay, this seems really interesting. And I auditioned and got into a play called The Bully Pulpit. And I played the girlfriend of the main character, who invites her friend, or the boyfriend of the main character, rather, who invites her friend over to her house. And this friend is trying to start an anti-bullying campaign. Mm-hmm. And she is actually kind of a bully herself. Mm. So tension arises from things she says and things that are going on in the actual context of that. And I enjoyed that show. That was my first real experience memorizing lines and acting. And that was the part where I'm like, yeah, I'd do that again. The next year, I got cast in a show called This Is a Test. It's written by Stephen Gregg. And it's about this kid who I played in the original show. This kid that has not felt prepared for the test that is about to come, just completely unprepared. And everyone else around him is like cheating and scribbling on notes and talking amongst themselves and causing a ruckus in class. And somehow he's the only one who's getting called out for not knowing what the heck's on the test.
Yeah.
And that was such a blast to be a part of. I'm still looking for the video, because I know we always film our shows. I'm still looking for the video of that show, because that was such a fun show to be a part of. And then that year, people had told me, I think, to try out for the musical a couple of times. The previous, when I was in sixth grade, the musicals were Honk and 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Mm-hmm. We sometimes do two musicals, one for middle school and one for high school, and sometimes we do it combined. And for a while, I just wasn't that interested. And when I heard that the my eighth grade musical was going to be Shrek Jr.,
okay,
I was like, the trailer for the original musical looked so stupid. Mm-hmm. I don't really think I'm interested in this. Right. I'll pass. Yeah. But people really wanted me to join, because the previous year I didn't try out for Cats, because that would have been really intense. Right. That was an intense musical. I saw that. I actually ended up watching that show, and it was really great. But I thought about it for a bit, and I was like, you know what? I might as well just try out now. If I don't try out now, who knows when I'll try out for the musical. So I'll try out, and I'll try out as Shrek for the heck of it. We'll see what ends up happening. I was the only one on the day who actually memorized lines specifically for Shrek. Everyone else who read for Shrek was reading lines so that Donkey could audition. Everyone wanted Donkey.
Oh, yeah. Boy.
Everyone, everyone really wanted Donkey. That was the character.
So. Wow. Yeah, and that probably was my favorite character in Shrek, though. I mean, other than Shrek, I think Shrek was a great character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, everybody loved Donkey, and so everybody wanted to be Donkey. But it helped, I think, that I was the only one who actually auditioned for Shrek. I went in, Scottish accent and everything, and I got the part. And it was that I think fully cemented the idea of like, okay, I love theater. This is really fun. I'd never really danced before either. I've always had terrible hand-leg coordination. And so I'd never really fully danced for anything before. And so that was a new challenge that I was surprised I could overcome. And playing the character was, just a childhood dream come true, since that was one of my first movies growing up.
Yeah.
It was just such a fun show. And the shows after that were all amazing too. In ninth grade, I played Mal Beinecke in The Addams Family.
Yeah, that's another good one.
That one's great. That one's fun. That one was another one where I was like, okay, this is a new role. This is a new kind of role. In 10th grade, I played the wizard in Once Upon a Mattress, which was kind of my sit back and just kind of act role.
Okay. Okay.
Come in, have a couple of scenes, maybe do one kind of complicated dance, but mainly just, act. And at the time I was fine with that. And then, 11th grade, we did Chicago, and I got cast in an ensemble role. And that was, I think initially, I was so set on like trying to get the lead and yada, yada, that I was like, oh boy, ensemble, I don't know how well this is going to work. But then once we actually got to performing the show, it was so much fun.
Yeah. What's the energy like when you, like, with the crowd interacting with you and clapping and cheering? Like, what's the energy like?
Oh, it's great. Once you spend so long, you spend like 3 months learning the lines, learning the dances, practicing in an empty theater where, everybody else is cheering you on in that theater community, but you don't really get any other feedback aside from the director telling you, this was great, this you can improve on a bit, overall it was really good, or overall we kind of need to, step up the game because we're getting kind of close to the time and we're a little bit behind. So let's try and make sure we get that going. But once you actually get an audience out there and you hear the parts that they laugh at and you hear the parts that they clap at, and you get validation that the things you're saying and doing on stage are funny or are engaging or are interesting. Once you get that validation, it's just so fulfilling. And I was gonna talk about just briefly in Chicago, one of my ensemble parts was at the very end, I got to say this giant monologue introducing the main two characters, just saying like, okay, everybody, let's get this party started. Let's get everything. Let's just have some fun tonight. And that monologue every night, I didn't realize until the opening night that I did it, that everybody just cheered when I did that monologue, and just I got to kind of I got to kind of relish in the audience, just loving how I was doing the monologue, and that was always one of my favorite parts of the show, is just seeing that and seeing how audiences reacted to that particular monologue. That was such a fun part of the show. It's such a fun show in general.
Good for you, man. That sounds so exhilarating. Like, that sounds like your body's just kind of controlled, shaking in that moment, just kind of like soaking up that energy.
Oh yeah. And it meant it I'm just going to say this as well in case they end up listening to this. It meant the world to me when the people who played Velma and Roxy, who I admired and still admire very much, during the Music and Theater Awards, they were asked to do the dance one more time. And they asked me specifically to come up and do the monologue again because they didn't think they could do it without me. And it just, that meant the world to me, because at that point, I was like that. The previous year, I kind of questioned whether or not I had wanted to do theater, still continuing, because it was kind of tiring doing all the rehearsals, and I didn't know how much of a passion I still had for it, and there were people behind the scenes that kind of weren't amazing to work with, and so I was like, oh God, all right, well, do I really want to? And that validation that what I was doing meant something to people that I actually admired meant the world to me at that time.